Thank you for joining me on the My Positive Perspective Internet show today, where we feature individuals and groups who share the common goal of improving the local Charleston community. Today's episode is brought to you by Ginny Deerin for Governor of Charleston. Joining me on today's episode is Ginny Deerin. So, how you doing today, Jenny?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us. And I'm 36 years old, and ever since I've been alive, of course, Mayor Joe Riley's been the mayor of Charleston. He's stepping down, and My Positive Perspective considers this a really rare opportunity to interview potential mayors. So maybe you could start off by telling the audience how you became interested in being a politician and what are your qualifications.
Okay. Well, I didn't come to it by wanting to be a politician, but I came to it because I think this is such an important time for our city, with Mayor Riley leaving after 40 years.
Yeah.
And also we have so much growth coming to our city that it's important to have a strong leader to make sure we do good things with that growth and not let bad things happen to our city that we all love so much.
Yeah. Certainly. And of course, you worked under Mayor Riley for a while. So what were kind of some things you learned from him?
Well, it's interesting because I worked on his first campaign 40 years ago, and I managed his last campaign.
Okay.
And during those 40 years, I worked with him on so many major initiatives in our city, from getting clean water out to Johns Island, to getting Charleston Place approved, to post-Hurricane Hugo citizen response efforts. And what I've learned from him, I think the biggest thing is to have a vision and think big and go for excellence. You know, some people say, for example, I'm very interested in transportation.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in building a world-class transportation system. Some people say, oh, you'll never do that.
Right.
What I've learned from Joe Riley is, no, you decide that this is what you are going to work with others to accomplish for our community.
Yeah.
And you lead toward that vision. And I think I've learned a lot of things from Mayor Riley, but that's the biggest one.
Okay. And of course, the important thing with traffic is you want to have a flow coming in, a flow coming out, just like that, so a cycle is never really broken. And speaking of that, 526, which we live on the fringe of here in West Ashley, is one of those things that has a starting point on one end and a stopping point on the other end. How is that bad for the flow of traffic, and how could that be improved?
Well, it's very bad. It just stops.
Yeah.
And what is so frustrating, I think, for people, West Ashley and other parts of the city, is the slow pace of getting it done. Because now it's quadrupled in price, because the governing bodies have not been able to get it together to make it happen. I think people are out of patience. We've now looking at almost 2 decades, and not 1 inch of the extension has been built. So in my view, we really have to recommit, get some fresh eyes, which I think I bring to the table, and we need to look at other funding options. And of course, top of my mind is the gas tax, which we were talking about a little earlier.
Yeah.
That would provide a sustainable source of funding.
Yes.
It is a very reasonable way to fund transportation and infrastructure. And last spring, one of my opponents had a chance to vote for it. And the Chamber of Commerce, the majority of the Charleston delegation, the Post and Courier, everybody was for it. And he voted no. Well, it didn't happen, but fortunately Mayor Riley and the other mayors are now stepping forward again to try to bring it back up when the legislature gets back in session. So that is certainly part of funding. Okay.
And of course, for you out there who may not be totally informed of the gas tax issue, it's a state tax, or an increase of the gas tax would affect the whole state of South Carolina, not just the city of Charleston. How would you work? So, that would obviously include working with Nikki Haley.
Yes.
Maybe you tell me a little about your relationship with her and what you learned from her, too.
Yeah. Well, I think certainly what I've learned about Nikki Haley in the last 6 months
Mm-hmm.
is that she is a person who is really open and willing to be with people. You know, when you think about the Emanuel 9 tragedy and how she attended every single funeral, and I just have a lot of admiration for someone who understands how important it is to be with people in their pain. But I think in terms of Nikki Haley, I think that she has an innovative approach to solving problems. I think she likes to look at different ways of coming at it. She just recently appointed a new head of the state infrastructure board, Vince Graham, who a lot of people were shocked because he is a very smart person. He lives in Charleston, and he comes with a very different point of view than most of the people sitting on that board. I think that's good because I think the way we come up with the best ideas is to have lots of different discussions about, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? We've been working on 526 now for almost 2 decades. Let's think differently. Let's, the definition of crazy, doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different result. So we need to work together, but come at it from different perspectives. Okay.
Now, I know we're in West Ashland, there's talk about annexing into the town of Ravenel. In Mount Pleasant, there's talks of annexing up into Allendale. How do we go about sustained urban development in the city of Charleston?
In terms of annexation?
In terms of annexing and making sure that we don't compromise our school, our police protection, our garbage pickup, recycling efforts, all those things.
Yeah. I believe that as we grow, and we are growing very quickly, that it's very important to be thoughtful about where we let development go. And also, I'm a believer that it's very important to get the infrastructure in place before the development comes out of the ground. And infrastructure could be roads, it could be recycling services, it could be making sure we have enough police, to make sure we're ready for the additional residents, the additional cars, the additional schools, so that we don't have too many people before the infrastructure is ready. And then kids have to start going to school in trailers, and the traffic becomes worse and worse and worse, and instead of being home, barbecuing or whatever with your family, you're stuck in traffic. So I think it's very important to plan well, and for the mayor and regional leaders to really work together to make sure life is good for the current residents and we don't move too quickly.
Okay, that's good. And then one additional question. I looked online today and was alarmed to see the construction in our airport, which, if you've ever been, it seems like it never ends. How can this properly be put to an end, and how can it? I know we have Boeing coming in, we have Volvo coming in shortly. What is that going to do to our airlines?
Yeah. It is distressing when you read how much over budget we are. I think part of that, you go over budget when things take too long. It is frustrating to look at government doing its work. The private sector looks at it and thinks, why is it taking so long?
Right.
And so as mayor, one of the things that I'll do in terms of city government is always be looking at how long is it taking us to do things.
Okay.
Let's look at this. How can we do it better? How do we do this? If the private sector is doing it at this pace, we should be doing it at that pace. Well, let's move more quickly. Right now, there are people. I have a friend who wanted to add 200 square feet to her restaurant. You know how long it took her to get her permit to do that?
pretty long time, probably.
1 year.
Wow, that's
1 year.
a change order, huh?
1 year. That's, and it's nobody's fault. The city of Charleston, I think one of the reasons why some of these systems are so slow is we've grown so quickly. We just need to start over with our systems so that they're more efficient and more effective, because think of the money that we lost in our economy by holding up that permit. So I think that government really needs to be self-aware that it oftentimes takes too long to get things done, and we should not put our head in the ground and say, well, that's okay, that's just the way it is. My view will always be, we shouldn't be over budget, we shouldn't take this long, time is money, let's get going.
Okay. Finally, for the viewers out there who want to read more of your, your campaign and policies, where can they take a look at that?
Ginny for Mayor, Ginny, GinnyForMayor.com. We have put a lot on our website, and I welcome your thoughts on any of our plans and proposals, because you know what? I believe that the best ideas for our city come from residents. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from folks.
Okay, Jenny, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
And then hopefully we'll hear from you more in the future. Thank y'all for tuning into the My Positive Perspective Internet Show. Have a great day.
On a sunny day, I feel my thoughts drift away. Only good vibes and good times living in my brain. On a sunny day, catch me lamping in the shade, feeling so fine and so high. Oh, my sunny day, still I hope all my efforts will one day pan out. The love within you'll never be without. So I roll, feeling strong and so invincible.